that I might have ever had. I can never say that the white man had his foot on my neck because he don't have shoes big enough to put on my neck. Unless I pin my back down, he can't ride me. But as long as I stand up and lift up my head unto the Lord, can't nobody, white man, black man, Hispanic man, can ride me unless the Lord leads me. Here is an opportunity to turn obscurity into opportunity. What was all of the cry about? What was it that made our forefathers proud? I thought about a few people, Dr. Brown, that I could just call to our attention for a moment. Sister like Bessie Coleman. Elizabeth Bessie Coleman, born in 1893, died 1926. She was born in Atlanta, Texas. In pursuing a flying career, she had 3 goals. She wanted to be a pilot, have a pilot's license, and become recognized as a stunt and exhibition flyer, and establish an aviation school for black folk. I'm sure Bessie was sitting over in the halls of heaven cheering for Barack Obama, even though she was rejected by every American aviation school she applied to because she was a black sister. She still stood her ground and decided, if you ain't gonna let me in your school, I'll start my own school. And I'm so glad that Bessie Coleman, Elizabeth Bessie Coleman, made up in her mind that I'll let nothing and nobody stop me. Look at your neighbor and say, I'll let nobody stop me. Maybe everybody teared up because they thought about George Washington Carver, born in 1864, died in 1943, who made agricultural advancements and inventions pertaining to the use of peanuts and do I have a witness in here? And created drugs to combat glaucoma. And he happened to be the very first African American admitted to the National Invention Hall of Fame in the 1990s after he was dead. And though maybe he was looking down at Barack Obama and saying, yes, we can. Maybe my brothers and sisters, it was people, a person by the name of Richard Theodore Greener, who was born in 1844 and died in 1922, who was the very first African-American zoologist and educator, who was the first person to discover that insects can hear. And maybe he thought about after a black man became president and said to America, yes, we can. Maybe the tears was flowing because of Fannie Lou Hamer, people like Fannie Lou Hamer, who my brothers and sisters, who decided rather that she would be the chief, the head person that will do great things. And I thought about this before I get to Fannie Lou Hamer because I remember this one person who really stood out, Richard Greer, Theodore Greer, who graduated from Harvard in 1870. He started out as in Auburn College. He was the first African American who was admitted into a white college and went on to be a lawyer. And now, when I looked at him, he didn't look like the African American that I thought he would look like. He had himself together. He had himself well groomed. He wore a nice suit. See, I mean, this brother had himself together. And I thought about this when I put this message together. And that was, if I'm going to ever make a difference in my household and in my community, I got to put myself together. I can't be on TV looking like a thug, looking like I don't have no sense, or looking like somebody who wasn't trained well with my pants hanging down, having people to look at the brand of my underwear. And my brand never was important in my underclothes. But my mama taught me that the underclothes was just that, underclothes. than everybody else. Fannie Lou Hamer, born in 1977, was the spirit of the civil rights movement, lived to register people to vote, and died doing it because she believed, like everybody else, she has a right to vote. Mary McLeod Bethune, born in 1875, died in 1955. Probably was looking over the banister of heaven as America made its first step to progress, and thought about how she started her own school for young ladies because they couldn't get a great education. And instead of her crying about it and whining about it, she made it up in her mind that she'll start her own school. Then to only work with several presidents to make sure that every child in America gets a great education.